Amazing boy sings in restaurant for grandma's surgery. What happened next left everyone shocked. 10-year-old Max gripped the edges of the stage, his small frame trembling slightly. The restaurant erupted in laughter and clinking of glasses, but Max's heart raced with a fear he couldn't quite articulate. His Grandma Nora, was sitting at a corner table, her smile brighter than the glowing neon signs that adorned the walls. But behind that smile lay the shadow of a diagnosis that threatened everything: surgery for a serious illness. The thought of losing her sliced through Max like a knife. How could he ever bear to face a world without her? Max had a miracle tucked in his pocket, a song he had written for her. It was raw, pouring forth his love, anxiety, and desperation. As he stood before the crowd, an emotional tempest whirled inside of him. Surely it was pointless. What could one boy's song do? Yet, his determination fought against doubt. He squeezed his eyes shut for a quick moment, feeling the warmth of tears brimming. His hand brushed against the scuffed guitar, a family heirloom, and he reminded himself he was doing this for Grandma Nora. With a deep breath, he began to sing. His voice shook, quivering against the backdrop of patrons' laughter. But with each word, he poured his heart into the melody. As the chorus floated into the air, patrons turned to look, some surprised, some intrigued. The initial chatter hushed, and he could see glimpses of the familiar faces in the audience, the people who had seen him grow up, who had shared countless meals with his grandma. A few patrons reached for their phones, capturing this fleeting moment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The song was a raw link to his grandmother's fading memories, a way to wrap her in emotional armor against the encroaching darkness. But the world outside this restaurant was chillingly complicated. Just as people began to cheer, the reality of their financial struggles loomed larger. Surgery wasn't just a matter of getting under the knife. It was a monstrous sum, dragging emotional weight back to the surface. What if this wasn't enough? What if it failed? Max's chest tightened. His heart felt like it was caught in a vice. Just then, whispers wafted through the crowd about a wealthy developer eyeing the restaurant for demolition. Max realized it was no longer just about Grandma Nora's surgery. Now he had to save both the restaurant and her. He felt torn. The pressure to prop up his community against this looming threat conflicted with the singular focus he had on saving his grandmother. The thought of disappointment darkened his spirit. What if he failed at both? Should he rally people to fight for the restaurant, risking the surgery, or focus solely on his grandmother? How could he even begin to convey the weight of both battles? The gentle lull of applause faded, replaced by a deafening roar in his head, a cacophony of doubts. The clock ticked closer to the day of Grandma Nora's surgery, and Max was trapped in the crossfire of uncertainties, feeling increasingly helpless. Could one boy can hold this all together? Would love be enough? His small world began to tremble, and he realized this was just the beginning of an unyielding struggle, one that no 10-year-old should shoulder alone. The revelation hit him with crushing force. He might have to unravel secrets long tucked away, secrets tied to his beloved Grandma Nora's past, before he could even attempt to forge a path forward. And as the tension hung heavy in the air, Max stood frozen, knowing he was just on the brink of a battle far greater than he had ever imagined. Max's hands trembled as he stepped off the stage, the echoes of polite applause still ringing in his ears. The weight of the dual crisis pressed against his young shoulders. Every face in the restaurant, from the kind waitress who knew Grandma Nora's order by heart to the gruff cook who had once shared a story of his own grandmother, seemed to amplify the stakes resting heavily atop his small frame. He needed to act, but where to begin? The restaurant was more than just a job for the owners. It was a home for countless memories, a sanctuary that had held the laughter of families, first dates, and many of his treasured moments with Grandma Nora. He pushed his way through the tables, needing to find a corner where he could think without the overwhelming noise. Max finally settled at a booth in the back and pulled a napkin from the holder, ready to jot down ideas. As he scribbled, a thought clawed at him. What if he could use what he had just done? The song had stirred something in the crowd, but how could he harness emotions to ignite a sense of urgency about saving the restaurant? Trying to quiet the storm in his mind, he focused intently on these questions, whispering them into his own thoughts. What if he organized a benefit performance? He could gather friends and musicians from school, expand the audience, pile up donations for Grandma Nora's surgery and the restaurant. It could be a night to remember. But would anyone rally for him? Would they come out on a Friday night to support a 10-year-old's cause? Risking failure was frightening, but so was the thought of not trying at all. As determination seeped into his veins, he recognized another idea simmering just beneath the surface. He would have to reach out to Grandma Nora and others who could help. Her friends were loyal, many of whom had attended the restaurant countless times. Some might remember her impactful stories of sacrifice and love. Yet another revelation twisted in his gut. There were stories he didn't know. Stories that were tied to the very fabric of the restaurant and Grandma Nora's legacy. Conversations she had shared about the sacrifices she made for the community over the years flooded his mind. They weren't mere anecdotes. They were powerful truths that he could weave into his plan. But how to start? The challenge was daunting, and Max's heart raced at the thought of confronting these shadows of history while also managing the uncertainty lurking around Grandma's surgery. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he would have to summon all the courage he had, balancing his quest to save both the woman who'd raised him and the place that had cradled their lives. As the last chords of applause lingered, Max stood up, a sudden clarity washing over him. With a deep breath, he clutched the napkin tightly, feeling as though he held the blueprint for a new chapter. But each step forward would demand confronting not only the people but the past that shaped them all. Would he do this right? Would he find the hidden stories of loyalty and sacrifice that would be powerful enough to draw others together? With purpose infusing his actions, Max turned toward the entrance. He would start this journey by seeking out Grandma Nora's stories, ready to learn what more he could do. As he opened the door and stepped into the bustling street, the crisp air invigorated his pulse. The time had come to face all that had been hidden, and perhaps discover something profound about himself along the way. Each passing moment felt like the revelation of a path stretching before him, leading to a confrontation that could redefine everything he believed. What deep, unspoken truths about Grandma Nora awaited him, and would uncovering them empower him enough to save not just her, but the heart of their community? Max stepped out onto the sunlit street, his resolve hardening as he took in the world around him. The air was crisp with the promise of change, and he felt it stir something inside him. An urgency to connect with the past, to understand the stories that had shaped the heart of the restaurant and the woman he adored. In the moments that followed, he knew he had to act quickly. Grandma Nora had stored countless memories like treasures, each one a thread in the tapestry of the restaurant's legacy. He couldn't be certain where to find these tales, whether they lay in her words or in the experiences of the people she'd touched. But he couldn't waste time second-guessing. He felt an electric charge in the air. He had to dig deeper. With a determined stride, he made his way to Grandma Nora's apartment above the restaurant. Each step felt heavier than the last as anticipation and dread intertwined in his stomach. What if the stories were harder than he imagined? What if they revealed more vulnerability than he was ready to handle? As he reached the door, he hesitated. The familiar creak echoed as he pushed it open, revealing a warm, cluttered haven filled with memories. Framed photographs from long-ago diners, spices lined like soldiers on the shelf, and the faint aroma of her famous chicken soup. His pulse quickened. This was where the heart of the restaurant beat strongest, where stories lived and breathed. "Grandma," he called softly, creeping inside. "Max? Is that you?" Her voice, filled with warmth and welcome, cut through the air. He turned to find her sitting in her favorite chair, a patchwork blanket draped over her lap, smiling faintly. The sight both comforted and pained him, a reminder of what was at stake. I had the idea I want to do something to help. His words tumbled out, half-formed and tentative. For your surgery in the restaurant. Oh, Max, she interrupted gently, her eyes sparkling. You have such a good heart. She gestured for him to join her, and he tucked himself next to her, feeling the warmth radiate from her. I want to organize a concert, he blurted out, eyes wide with excitement mingled with fear. But I need your stories to share. The ones that made your restaurant special. The people that know you. He watched her expression shift, a cocktail of concern and nostalgia. Her brows furrowed, as if wandering back through the corridors of her past. There are stories, my dear. Many of them are perhaps buried deep. Not all are easy to recount. Each word was deliberate, and Max felt the weight of her journey wrapping around his heart. Please, Grandma, I need to hear them, he insisted, an unexpected fierceness igniting inside him. His voice trembled slightly, shaking with the urgency of the moment. I think they will help me make people care, and maybe even save the restaurant. A deep sigh escaped her lips, the gravity of his request hanging in the air. He watched her eyes shimmer with unshed tears as memories flickered across her face. Max held his breath, sensing that he stood at the brink of revelation, of transformation. The diner was built on love and sacrifice, Max. Some of my stories, well, they're not easy. They show heartache, loss, and resilience. But they are necessary to understand. If we are to save the restaurant, we must be willing to reveal all that we are and all we've been through. Max felt the walls around him pulse as her words settled deep inside, igniting a fire he hadn't known burned so fiercely. Each story held the potential not only to evoke support, but to lift them both from the ashes of despair. Okay, he said, determination steeling his spine. I'm ready. As she began to recount a tale of a family who had found solace in her cooking during hard times, the atmosphere shifted. They were diving into a new beginning, one where courage and vulnerability would guide their path forward. Unbeknownst to him, each narrative added depth not only to the restaurant's legacy, but to his own understanding of what it meant to truly connect, to transcend fear through honesty. His heart surged with purpose as he realized the stories she revealed might hold more than just an emotional appeal. They could catalyze change, igniting fires in others. He needed to share these with the world, but how could he capture their raw power? As the afternoon wore on, Max found himself lost in the tales, absorbing every detail, bracing for the impact each one would have on the mission he envisioned. With every beat of his heart, he erected a blueprint, not just to save a restaurant, but to forge a bond deeper than he ever imagined. Max's resolve was set. But as the collective narratives began to weave a tapestry of hope, he could almost taste the uncertainty. How far his bravery would reach, how deep he'd have to dig to uncover the essence needed for his call to action. And even more haunting, would he be strong enough to handle the truths lurking in the shadows of their shared history? Would they stand together when the past demanded to be faced? The moment of confrontation loomed just ahead. As Grandma Nora wove the next story, a family that had returned year after year for Thanksgiving dinner, Max felt an internal shift. Each word from her lips wasn't just a tale, it was a legacy, one he was now fiercely committed to preserving and sharing. The narratives resembled a tightrope he was walking, balancing between nostalgia and the raw truths their lives encompassed. The sun dipped lower outside, casting shadows that danced across the walls, bridging the space between past and present. Max listened intently, his mind racing. He was now a custodian of narratives that held the power to redefine his reality, beckoning him to challenge the constraints of his self-doubt. Just like those families who had found sanctuary in the warmth of the restaurant, he too began to feel a stirring within himself, a calling to rise beyond mere survival and embrace the profound responsibility of storytelling. "Max," Grandma Nora paused, her gaze intensifying. "Do you understand what these stories truly mean to us?" "Yes," he breathed, his heart pounding with the weight of her question. "I need to share them. I think they can build bridges, not just for me but for others too. It's time we breathe life back into this place." As she shared tales of hardship and redemption, Max's own vulnerabilities surged to the forefront of his mind. Could he really gather not just stories, but also faces? The faces of the very people who had once laughed, cried, and healed through her cooking? It was essential to him, to honor their struggles as well as celebrate the triumphs embodied in her dishes. With each revelation, however, came a fresh wave of anxiety. He could feel the burden of expectation building. What if the stories weren't enough? What if his efforts fell flat and the restaurant was lost forever? He wrestled with the idea that each success born from Grandma Nora's legacy could just as easily spiral into disaster. He felt himself at a crossroads, where the accolades for her hard work could slip through his fingers like grains of sand if he didn't approach this venture with utmost sincerity. "Max?" Grandma's voice pulled him from his rapid thoughts. "If we do this together, we must prepare ourselves. The truth is often met with resistance. There are people who won't understand." The reality settled heavily. Each story was punctuated with moments of loss that were not just theoretical. They were palpable, laden with expectations from the very community that sustained them. He would need to engage deeply with those who had been part of these experiences, the diners, the employees, the long-lost friends, to inscribe a complete picture of this culinary sanctuary. Understanding that every perspective mattered drove a sharp need within him. "I want to," he declared, feeling the resolve surge within him. "I want to bring those people here, to reignite the bonds that made this place what it is." As the evening darkened outside, they moved through the stories until coming to a tale of a woman who had originally inspired Grandma Nora to open the restaurant. This woman's tenacity spoke to Max's heart, urging him to confront his own fears. He recognized her essence in every single dish served, and he felt it compel him forward. Visions of flyers and local gatherings began to swirl in his mind. He considered how he might reach these people, the past patrons who held the keys to their shared history. It would require not just courage, but also strategic thinking. Hours of late-night brainstorming awaited him, filled with ideas that bubbled to the surface with a new clarity. He needed to focus on the mechanics of connection and how to share their journey. But just as excitement took root, doubt knotted in his stomach. The prospect of facing these memories head-on felt daunting. What if the effort alienated people, or if they failed to resonate with the past? Would their stories be seen as relics, or could they breathe relevance into the here and now? Max leaned forward, a sense of urgency weaving through him. "Let's compile a list of people, those who connected here. Everyone deserves to be part of this journey. Everyone in our community who remembers what this place means." As they began brainstorming, a silence filled the room, thick with potential and unspoken fears. Max could feel the moments stretching, their future hanging in the precarious balance between hope and anxiety. And as they crafted this fragile plan together, a new resolve settled over him, one that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. What awaited them on this path of discovery? Would the reconciliation of their histories embolden them, or fracture the delicate memories housed within the restaurant's walls? The stories lay before him like unturned stones, each a testament to resilience dressed in the most familiar flavors. The real question remained: how far could Max dig before the foundation quaked beneath him? As the weight of the evening settled, Max felt an electrifying rush of responsibility, one that would transform everything he thought he knew about connection and belonging. He now sensed a crucial truth. This endeavor was not solely about reviving a restaurant. It was about reclaiming a heritage that had been quietly waiting to resume its narrative. And he realized he stood at the threshold of a deeper transformation. To save his grandmother's legacy, he would need to become someone new. The next day promised confrontation, not only with old acquaintances, but with the stories that needed to be unearthed. Would he dare face them? And what would he uncover as he navigated the landscapes of love, loss, and culinary prowess? The first rays of dawn crept into Max's room with an unsettling urgency. The day ahead loomed large, filled with possibilities but overshadowed by the weight of his intentions. He could feel the reverberation of Grandma Nora's words echoing in his mind, the truths to be uncovered, the stories waiting to be shared, and the delicate balance he had to maintain for the restaurant and its legacy. The realization of his quest, this reclamation of history, felt like a dark tide rising, demanding to be confronted. His fingertips brushed against the rough surface of the notepad resting on his bedside table. Doodles and bullet points filled its pages, each note a manifestation of his frenetic thoughts. The task was monumental, and a wave of self-doubt washed over him each time he examined the list of former patrons and employees he intended to reach out to. What was he even trying to convey? Every name scribbled down represented a connection fraught with memories, pride, and perhaps disappointment. If they had come to be seen through his lens, would they be willing to relive it all? Max threw on a hoodie, the fabric comforting against his skin, and shuffled into the kitchen. The aroma of brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of spices and herbs that still lingered, remnants from the previous night's marathon of storytelling. He found comfort in routine, in the small rituals of preparing breakfast. Yet as he stirred the eggs, his mind raced ahead, picturing the faces tied to the restaurant's history. He needed a strategy, a way to invite their narratives back to life without stoking the fires of resentment or guilt. "Max?" Grandma Nora's voice broke his reverie. Her energy filled the room as she entered, freshly dressed, a bright scarf wrapped around her neck. "Ready for a big day ahead?" "I'm trying to be," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "It just feels overwhelming." She finished for him, eyes twinkling with understanding. "That means you're on the right track. Remember, each story is a thread in our tapestry. Find the colors that connect, but also those that contrast. We need honesty." Her words ignited a spark. Honesty. He hadn't considered how vital it would be to face the tougher moments. It was time not just to share joys, but to acknowledge wounds that had scarred the restaurant as well. This duality might draw people in, make them feel seen and heard. A plan began to form, rooted in courage and empathy. Let's reach out with a simple invite, something that calls upon our shared memory without forced nostalgia. Maybe I could organize a small gathering at the restaurant. Grandma Nora's brow knitted, then relaxed. A gathering where they can share what Chef Nora meant to them? Yes. I want them to relive not just the food, but the emotions, the warmth, the connection. It's not just a night of reminiscing. It's about forming a circle of trust again. For a few moments they brainstormed, the air heavy with intent. Max's heart raced at the prospect of rekindling those connections, but it stung. "I can already see it. The faces, the laughter," he mused. But then the fear crept back in. But what if I encounter someone whose story I can't manage? Someone bitter about their experience? "That can happen," Grandma Nora admitted slowly. "Some stories are ghosts, Max. You have to be ready to honor them, acknowledge their pain without taking it on yourself." Deep breath. It was advice steeped in wisdom, one that demanded respect for the struggles of others, a commitment to vulnerability. The obstacles he harbored within would have to be faced, even as he opened the doorway for others to express their truths. Determined, he multitasked, sending out email invitations while ensuring the restaurant kitchen remained prepped to receive old friends and estranged faces. With each name added to his list, he comprehended that the path to reclaiming his grandmother's legacy involved weaving their stories into something greater. As afternoon settled, he paused, staring into the screen. The list was far more than mere names or connections. It was the heartbeat of his project, a collective living memory that yearned for expression. A sudden ping drew his attention, a response from one of the invitees. An old friend who had walked away from the restaurant years ago, burned by a misunderstanding. Would they accept or reject his olive branch? Anticipation swirled within, yet uncertainty gripped his heart. What lay ahead hinged on forging these connections anew, pushing past his fears. But as he contemplated the impact of this gathering, a deeper question emerged. Were the faces worth the potential fraught encounters? And could he ultimately survive the cracks laid bare? Max's phone buzzed again. Another invite response. The moment of reckoning felt near. Would the unfolding of their stories uplift, or shatter the fragile bonds tethering him to the past? The restaurant was a bridge, not just to memories lived, but to truths that demanded to be spoken. He opened the message, breath hitched. This could change everything. The emotional pulse of the gathering tugged at Max, pulling him into a turbulent fog of anticipation and dread. He had waded into uncharted waters, yet now stood on the precipice of an awakening. Would the invitees see the value in revisiting old scars in the name of healing? As evening approached, he busied himself in the restaurant, the familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables grounding him in the chaos of uncertainty. Each slice of the knife resonated with his resolve to navigate this delicate venture. The bustling kitchen surrounded him with a vibrant energy, yet the emotional weight of the impending gathering loomed larger than he had expected. He glanced at the wall adorned with photographs of the restaurant's rich history, smiling faces of customers and staff frozen in time, embodying the very essence of joy and struggle within these walls. Max lingered on the faces, feeling a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. Were they ready to confront the shadows that had lingered long after the laughter had died away? It was a moment of reckoning when Grandma Nora entered. The sight of her lit a familiar spark of encouragement within him. "The restaurant feels alive today," she remarked, eyes sweeping over the preparations. "Does it?" he replied, suppressing a wave of apprehension. "Absolutely. It's not just about the food. It's about the stories we serve alongside it." Her firm yet gentle voice held a comforting weight. Perhaps there was magic in the air, he thought, tracing the outline of the notepad in his pocket. What if they don't want to share? What if it's too painful? Doubt seeped into his words. Then let it be known it's safe to sit in silence, even among friends. The space should hold comfort for every emotion. Her eyes bore into his, firm yet compassionate. You'll find your way. Each moment has its own truth to unveil. Her words seeped into his core, nudging away the uncertainty. He began to comprehend. This gathering wasn't only for the recalled memories, but also for the unknown stories that could emerge from shared vulnerability. To truly reclaim the legacy, he would need to navigate through more than just nostalgia. He had to invite raw, unfiltered honesty into the room. As the first guests began to arrive, Max felt his heart race. Each familiar face that pushed through the door was a brush with potential connection, yet an echo of caution fluttered within. Were they willing to explore the dimensions of their shared past? The weight of the moment pressed upon him. A wave of nostalgia swept through the room, laughter and casual catch-ups punctuating the air. Memories floated back, tales of culinary delights or mishaps mingling with the understated tension brewing beneath the surface. Fear entwined with hope, driving Max to stay vigilant. A familiar voice pierced through, unsettlingly tense. "So, you think it's appropriate to dredge up the past?" It was Ben, his grandmother's former sous chef, his own history intertwined with discontent. Not everyone is here to relive their mistakes. Max's pulse quickened. The vulnerability he had aimed for hung precariously in the balance. "It's not about mistakes, Ben," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "It's about understanding how those mistakes shaped us. We're not here to judge, just to share. Share, or to reopen old wounds." Ben pushed back, fury brimming in his voice. Their moment of confrontation gripped the room's energy, the flickering echoes of the past casting a shadow over the present. Max had anticipated resistance, but this confrontation felt like the crux of everything. But deep within him, a flicker of determination ignited. He was ready to embrace the complex truth of their stories. While this gathering held the potential to fracture connections, it also carried the promise of forging new paths forward. Every tale welcomed would echo just as loudly as the pain. He took a breath, ready to set the stage for a dialogue that could either uplift or irrevocably alter their relationships. "Perhaps we must create a new story together," he said, searching the room for eyes that would join him. Caught between pain and belonging, Max pondered the risk of this venture. But what he hadn't anticipated was how he would bear the weight of those narratives, each potentially reviving long-dormant cleavages, or worse, undermining any progress made. As tension palpably hung in the air, Max's phone vibrated. Another message? Was it another invite? A concerned patron? Or perhaps a final warning from the past? Each possibility ignited familiar flickers of dread, yet also courage, pushing him closer to a threshold he never knew he would have to cross. What risks awaited him as stories began to pour forth and tensions escalated? Would history's ghosts guide them to reconcile or drive them deeper into their murky divides? The silence that followed Ben's accusation hung like a thick fog, stifling the atmosphere. As eyes darted around the room, Max felt the heat rising in his chest. He braced himself. This was the moment that could derail everything he had set in motion. "Look," he began, searching each face for an ally. "I understand the hesitation. Confronting the past isn't easy, especially with scars still fresh. But what if we don't lean into our shared pain?" Ben folded his arms, the tension radiating off him like a tempest. "What if we just bury the hatchet and pretend everything is fine?" "Is that really living?" Max shot back, heart racing. "Can we grow without facing what's holding us back?" For a fleeting moment, clarity pierced through the emotional murk. He wasn't just clinging to hope for the gathering. He was advocating for himself, for healing that he hadn't realized he was yearning for. The rustle of whispers filled the room as others processed Max's words. The energy shifted, creating a palpable tension, but it also ignited something stirring under the surface. It felt as though, for the first time, the invitees were contemplating their own hesitations, ready to acknowledge unsaid feelings. Suddenly, another voice emerged from the crowd. Maya, a longtime waitress, known for her no-nonsense attitude. "I don't want to revisit my past, but maybe it's not about dredging up old woes, but rather learning from them. Isn't that why we are here?" Max seized this moment. Exactly. We can choose how we approach our stories, whether to shroud ourselves in darkness or to step into the light of understanding. This perspective seemed to resonate, the room buzzing anew. Ben's rigid posture softened slightly, though his resolve remained intact. "You think this is going to make things better? Just talking about it like it's some kind of therapy session?" "It's not about therapy," Max replied, his voice firm yet compassionate. "It's about connection. It's about acknowledging that we're all carrying something, and that we don't have to carry it alone." His heart pounded, a relentless rhythm echoing the urgency of his message. Eager murmurs unfurled through the crowd, the atmosphere tinged with tentative curiosity. Max felt a rush of adrenaline intertwined with fear. Could this truly be a turning point? Or was he stepping onto shaky ground? Then, the unexpected happened. A familiar figure stepped forward, Grandma Nora, her frail yet fierce silhouette cutting through the mounting tension. "I've seen many seasons in this restaurant and many faces at its tables," she began, her voice steady. "And it's always been the stories, good and bad, that knit us together. The pain taught us resilience. We must honor that." Her words struck a chord, reverberating through the room. Max's chest tightened, a mixture of pride and anxiety surging within him. "Thank you, Grandma." he managed, knowing they had entered a profound territory of vulnerability. But as the gathering shifted gears, and some began to nod in agreement, Ben's reaction imploded the moment. What if we're just reopening old arguments? What if this ends up hurting more than healing? Max felt the heat rush to his face again, words bubbling at the back of his throat. He had hoped that Ben would soften. Instead, the confrontation became a tightrope walk. Then let's choose to learn from it. Staying silent hasn't stopped the hurts from lingering. Ben blinked, anger mixing with a flicker of insecurity, as he seemed to grapple with the weight of his own past. In a surprising twist, Max realized that Ben was a reflection of his own fears. The discord created a mirror, revealing how Max had buried certain aspects of his journey, evading confrontation. The conversation became a dance, each response a step toward understanding or further conflict. But as silence threatened to seep in again, Max took a leap, a genuine challenge surfacing. What if we share one thing that we've learned from our mistakes? One insight at a time. The room shifted again. Hesitation mixed with a thread of excitement, and all eyes silently questioned. Could they accept the challenge? Could they strip away the comfortable layer of distraction and face the truth? Max's pulse raced, feeling the potential for transformation hover in the air. What stories once buried would rise to the surface? And just as the first hand lifted tentatively into the air, another vibration from Max's phone jolted him back, the anxious anticipation cresting anew. Who else's voice was about to join the conversation? Would it be another echo of the past, or a call for unity? The narrative was poised on the edge of revelation, each moment bursting with the promise of a new chapter. Max's adrenaline surged as he glanced at his phone, the stark contrast of its glowing screen against the heavier atmosphere around him. It felt like an untimely intrusion, a reminder of the thin line he was treading between vulnerability and chaos. As he unlocked the device, heart pounding, he saw Karen's name lighting up the screen, a voice he hadn't anticipated. Why now? He hesitated. This moment was crackling with intensity, the air thick with the unconfessed. Could he allow another distraction? Yet, his gut twisted with the weight of unanswered questions, and he felt drawn to the urgency in her message. Max, we need to talk. It's about your grandma. His heart sank, pulling him back from the brink of his current confrontation. Grandma Nora, with her unwavering spirit, had always been a source of guidance. Now, the thought of her vulnerability shattered his focus. He took a deep breath, grounding himself before slowly putting the phone down. He returned his gaze to Ben, who stood at the center of the room, still wrestling with ambiguity. Let's keep this going, Max said, forcing steadiness into his voice. You don't have to share your stories all at once. Even just one lesson learned. It might unravel something important for us all. The collective tension shifted, the idea settling over the room like a blanket. A hand from the back of the crowd rose shyly, and Max's pulse quickened. The moment felt delicate, as if every choice could lead to either enlightenment or another stumbling block. A young man named Chris, whose worn-out sneakers mirrored the weight of his own history, cleared his throat. I once thought ignoring my problems would make them disappear, but they just lingered. Until one day, I had to confront my dad about the hurt he caused. His eyes darted to the floor, but there was a trace of resolve creeping in. Ben's eyebrows knitted together, processing Chris's confession. It wasn't a grand revelation, but it was a step, an authentic offering that nudged at the shared vulnerability Max had been striving for. Yeah, I get that, Ben finally spoke, a hint of humanity softening his defensiveness. It's like pretending it didn't happen only builds more resentment. But facing it? That's terrifying. Max sensed his chance. Maybe that's where we cultivate strength. Through fear. Through sharing, we disarm the power it holds over us. He couldn't believe the words as they spilled from his lips, a mix of passion and desperation, to help them all step through the gate of their shared turmoil. The atmosphere shifted again, now alive with anticipation. More hands began to rise, and stories floated forth like confetti. Stories of regret, of redemption, of losses that shaped their identities. Max felt a warm glow in the chamber of his heart, slowly settling into the joyful realization that connection was not merely a goal, but a growing reality. Each word drew them closer, weaving a tapestry of empathy that lingered in the air. Yet, amid the collective healing, Max's thoughts drifted. Would Grandma Nora be all right? How could he give his attention to this unfolding moment when he feared losing an anchor in his life? His internal battle churned, conflicting with the sense of purpose that had ignited within him. Just as someone shared a laugh that cut through the heaviness, another touch from his phone jolted him. Was it another message? He reached cautiously for it, feeling the rift between loyalty to the gathering and fear for his grandmother tightening. "You have to be here, Max," echoed a supportive voice in his head, one that felt rooted in trust. But as he glanced back at Ben, whose expression was darkening again, another thought unspooled in his mind. What if this confrontation, this moment of connection, was the very thing he needed to grow, to fight for his grandma's legacy? With renewed determination, he stepped further into the fray. What if we created a pact today? Not just to share our stories, but to support each other through these challenges that shape us. Ben looked conflicted, but intrigued. And just as Max wondered whether this vulnerable pact would find its footing, a deep breath from somewhere in the room shifted the atmosphere once again. The vibration that interrupted them wasn't just a device, it was a calling for Max. Would he stake everything on this moment, or would he allow fear to dictate his next steps? As uncertainty lingered, he caught Ben's eye, a silent challenge passing between them. Would their stories intertwine, or could they still unravel? The thread of hope extended just beyond reach, and the stakes rose ever higher. How far would they go to confront not only their pasts, but those connections that could, at long last, forge new futures? Max felt the weight of expectation settle heavily on his shoulders as he surveyed the room, the mixture of hope and trepidation hanging in the air. A pact was a commitment, a promise to provoke deeper introspection and provide support. But who was he to ask this of them? "Just say it," his inner voice urged. "You have to lead by example." He pulled in a steadying breath and faced Ben directly. "I need you to consider this too. We all have our burdens. But if we share them, isn't there a chance they become lighter?" Ben shifted uncomfortably, eyes narrowing in suspicion. He looked almost ready to bolt. Max hesitated, but there was no turning back. "Our stories matter," he pressed on, his resolve hardening with each word. "They craft our identities, even when they hurt. I'm here to support you, but I need support myself. We need to be there for each other." Silence enveloped the room, a pregnant pause rife with unspoken fears. The faces of those assembled varied, some filled with empathy, others lined with skepticism. Each gaze was a mirror reflecting Max's vulnerability, forcing him to confront the visceral reality of connecting through shared experience. "Okay," Ben finally spoke, sounding less confrontational, a slight crack in his armor. "But what does that look like?" In that moment, Max realized this was more than a mere suggestion. It was a crucible for transformation. "We draw a line in the sand today," he declared, emboldened by both desperation for connection and the image of Grandma Nora flashing in his mind. "We commit to revealing our truths and holding space for each other. No judgments, just support." With cautious nods from the group, Max felt a spark of hope. They were hesitant, yet curious, and he sensed a shift. The collective energy stirred, wrapped around his vulnerabilities and his determination. But as he basked in this newfound momentum, another vibration surged from his phone, pulling him out of the moment again. Karen. The urgency in her message nagged at his thoughts. Grandma Nora. He looked down, a wave of guilt crashing over him. He fought the impulse to dive into the screens, battling the pull. Would it betray the pact he was trying to create? His heart raced, hovering between the longing of connection and the tightrope of responsibility. Yet, wasn't he advocating for openness? The dichotomy of panic and purpose twisted in his mind, threatening to unravel the fragile unity forming between him and the group. Before he could think better of it, Max opened the message. "Max, it's urgent. She's slipping." A paralyzing jolt shot through him, igniting a primal fear. Was he destined to fail at both dimensions of his life? Could he abandon this nascent connection? "Max?" Ben's voice sliced through the noise in his head, pulling him back into the room. "She's ill," Max admitted, the words tumbling from his lips. He could feel the tension shift again, the air thickening with shared concern. "My grandma. She might need me." A moment of shared silence filled the room, each person grappling with their individual burdens, yet drawn together by Max's raw honesty. "Then you need to go," Ben said slowly, his tone shifting from antagonistic to supportive. "We can hold this space for you. Don't let this moment slip away." Relief and guilt warred within Max. Should he leave the group he had fought to connect with? He felt the waves of responsibility crashing against his conflicting desire for belonging. Would leaving demonstrate the very fear he sought to combat? Max froze, weighing the cost of every decision heavy on his heart. Breaking their newly forged pact could stonewall their budding connection, but staying put felt like negligence towards his grandmother. "Can I have both?" he questioned inaudibly. The world he had aimed to build suddenly felt precariously balanced. As he stood there, consumed by the tightrope he was on, a revelation struck him. Not every path was unidirectional. What if he could harness this moment, allow both responsibilities to coexist? The idea brewed inside him, a mix of determination and the fear of losing something dear. Max straightened, words again on the edge of brink. "Then let's transform this moment into purpose. For my grandma, and for us." And with that, a thought rekindled the spark of courage inside him. The time had come to face not just his values, but the moments that shaped who he was. Would this revelation thread through their stories, or would he falter in his resolve? What awaited him on the other side? Max stood at the crossroads of his life, the storm of emotions swirling around him like leaves caught in a whirlwind. His grandmother's health had taken a tenuous turn, but in the gathering of long-lost patrons, he felt a sense of resolve hardening within him. This was not merely a moment, it was a turning point, an opportunity to weave together the fragments of his past and present. With a deep breath, he realized his dual responsibilities did not have to exist in opposition, but as interwoven strands of purpose. "I've got to face this head-on," he declared to himself, bolstered by the supportive presence of the crowd. "It's time to stand for Grandma Nora's legacy while rallying this community of stories." This commitment ignited a spark in him. He gently closed his phone, placing it aside. He had done enough planning. It was time for action. "We can't just talk about vulnerability. We need to embody it," he said, directing his gaze towards Ben and the others who had shared their insecurities. "I'm going to keep this gathering alive, even if I temporarily step away to support my grandma. I need you all to connect, to share, and I promise I will return, ready to continue this fight together." Max felt the atmosphere change palpably, his words stitching a new tapestry of unity. Ben nodded, breaking into a tight smile that was unexpectedly sincere, as though a heavy weight had been lifted. "You're right, Max. This isn't just about you or me. It's about all of us standing together." Relief flooded over Max, and as laughter began to ripple throughout the room again, he knew he had gracefully balanced the delicate situation. A support network was forming right in front of him, stories pouring forth, truths being revealed, a community rediscovering their interconnected roots. Deciding he would use his time at Grandma Nora's to gather more stories, he devised a plan informally with the guests. While I'm taking care of my grandma, how about we turn our focus here? You all can keep the spirit alive by sharing your memories with one another. Create a list. Keep it going. We'll build something great in her honor. A wave of enthusiasm spread through the crowd. The promise of an ongoing dialogue energized everyone. Yes, let's list our favorite moments, and we can cultivate this into an open mic night to celebrate her, someone proposed eagerly. Yes, Max replied, gripping the edges of the confidence that now surged through him. This is our chance to honor where we've been, and where we still want to go. The door hadn't just opened for memories to surface, it had quieted the dark shadows of doubt. Attendees began to share laughter and smiles, their eyes glistening with the joy of connection. For Max, each tale recounted formed a strong thread in the hopeful tapestry of their restaurant's legacy. Days later, as he sat beside Grandma Nora in her hospital room, the atmosphere felt charged with possibility. She grasped his hand weakly, but with a grip firm enough to remind him of her unwavering spirit. The stories he had gathered, fueled by love and community support, danced in his mind, glimmering with the promise of continuity. Grandma, he began, hesitating, I've realized the stories of the restaurant are not just yours, but belong to everyone who has dined here. They're part of us. We built those memories together. Nora smiled through her tired eyes, and in that moment, Max understood he carried a torch of resilience within him. You've always taught me that our experiences are nourished by connection, surrounded by family, he continued, gaining confidence. And now it's my turn to carry that flame forward. Spurred by her approving smile, he leaned in even closer. The benefit concert is officially happening, and everyone is excited to contribute. They want to share their stories for you and the restaurant. Her eyes sparkled with pride, and the weight of her influence settled over him like a warm embrace. You've become a remarkable young man, Max. Are you ready for the challenge? She asked softly. Absolutely, he exclaimed. And in that moment, he felt profound growth. He became the bridge between the past and the future, stepping confidently into his role. Not just as a grandson, but as a steward of their shared legacy. As he connected the threads of community and family, he transformed from a boy gripped by fear into a young leader passionately voicing the importance of unity. When he returned to the restaurant for the concert, the energy was electric, filled with eager voices and familiar faces. Max tapped the microphone and called out, "Tonight is not just for Grandma. It's for all of us, for the stories unearthed and the bonds renewed. Let's make this a celebration." The first chord sounded, and the crowd exploded into cheers. In his heart, Max found solid confidence. He had conquered fear and uncertainty, fortifying not only his promise to grandmother, but also the very foundation of their cherished community venture. As the night unfolded, recognition for Max's courage blossomed in the eyes of each participant. Tales flowed like a river, bridging gaps once thought to be insurmountable. The legacy they had rebuilt together shimmered with purpose. Max had emerged from the shadows of self-doubt to a position of acknowledged competence, fully aware that achieving fulfillment meant embracing the delicate dance between vulnerability and courage. He had proven to himself, and to all around him, that in sharing stories, life's complexities could transform into a thriving, cascading force of love. And as the final notes reverberated through the restaurant, a strong sense of accomplishment washed over him. He felt he had not only salvaged his grandmother's dream, but had also sculpted his own identity within the communal spirit they had all shared. The moment felt complete, rich in triumph and authenticity. He could confront the world, braving new horizons with the confidence that he had woven a legacy, both for Grandma Nora and the vibrant community that had enveloped them. Max raised his hands in a gesture of gratitude, encompassing everyone in that room. "Let's keep this going," he declared, embodying the spirit of connection. "Together, we are stronger." And from the depths of his heart, he knew he had truly achieved something monumental. He had stepped into his purpose, emerged triumphant, and embraced the very legacy of love. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.